I published a new post earlier today, July 8th, 2026, that discusses some of my recent trades. A link to my blog post, which I started to publish in October 2008, can be found in my profile section here at YouTube. I discuss in that post why I believe the ceasefire between Iran and the U.S. is no longer in effect, at least for the present time. The reason relates to whether vessels will be allowed to safely pass through the southern corridor of the Strait, which is the route approved by the U.S. That hugs the coast of Oman, or Iran's approved corridor near its coast. Iran has attacked an oil tanker that was attempting to pass through the southern corridor shortly after the MOU was signed in June. One of the ships that was successfully hit was an oil tanker. And the southern corridor is purportedly protected by the U.S. Navy to prevent any attacks on vessels passing through that corridor. But that claim of safe passage being protected by the U.S. Navy has proven so far to be illusory. The recent attacks by Iran on ships have been on those attempting passage through this southern corridor. And I've had to ask myself, why does it make any difference what corridor is used if Iran and the U.S. are on the same page about safe passage through the strait and who controls the various corridors through the strait? The only answer that makes any sense to me, at least, is that Iran wants to collect tolls for passage through its approved corridor that now have been relabeled as service fees, and they can more easily collect those fees when the passage is closer to its coast rather than the coast of Oman. Trump says the ceasefire is over, and that may or may not prove to be the case, and he does not want to talk with Iran anymore. What are the options that he has then? He can resume the war, close the strait to Iran crude shipments through the strait, or basically expand the war back into Iranian territory as Iran responds with attacks on energy infrastructure facilities throughout the Persian Gulf region and effectively blocks transit of crude through the strait from other countries in the Persian Gulf, which was what was occurring after the war started in late February 2026, excuse me. I view the U.S. stock market indexes to be overvalued and in bubble territory, though the number of stocks with bubble valuations are fewer now, far fewer, I would say, as I recall, than what was prevailing in 2000 when the S&P hit its previous valuation peak with the Shiller PE ratio near where it is now. Over the past several days, there has been an ongoing rotation out of these richly valued stocks into those more reasonably valued using traditional valuation criteria for valuing a company. Nothing much is working today. The crude oil decline today in West Texas Intermediate, which is the one I primarily focus on, is still far below the peak levels hit after the war started. And the stock market reaction so far today is basically relaying that none of these recent developments in the Iran war are important issues other than causing a day or two or three of anxiety among some participants. That remains to be seen whether that is a correct forecast for the near future. So, when looking at stock valuations and the reality of what is actually happening in the U.S. economy and what may happen based on announced intentions of the U.S. President, I remain cautious on adding stocks, and my bonds ads are in the short-term spectrum with continued purchases of Treasury bills. I will continue to be a net seller each week of stocks, at least when there are rallies in the stocks that I own, which has been the case during other downturns prior to today that I own. I did go slightly into a net add in U.S. stock allocations as discussed in my U.S. stock allocations as discussed in my blog post published earlier today, but there was still an overall reduction in the stock allocation after of about $3,500 or so when deducting the proceeds received from eliminating a Canadian REIT position on the Toronto Stock Exchange. One of the negatives, other than inflation, is a continued weak job market, in my opinion, with wage growth being consumed by increases in inflation. So, negative real net wage growth. So far in 2026, the average monthly job gain is 92,000, with the May and June numbers still being subject to revision. I have included a snapshot of the BLS data in my last post. The average monthly job gain in 2025 was 9,667, that is per month. That is being sold by Trump and Republicans in general as a new golden age for the U.S. economy. While Trump's reality creations work on tens of millions, these creations about affordability that they've been promoting and the cost squeezes on most households are not likely to be readily accepted by many of his supporters. People know what they're paying for gas, health, and other insurance, groceries, and other necessities that they have to buy, and many will respond negative to politicians of either party, saying that those cost pressures do not even exist, or, as Trump said earlier, are only a hoax promoted by Democrats. Trump's number one priority, and he has stated this repeatedly recently, is not bringing down inflation or creating more jobs and wage growth or dealing with the affordability crisis that many working families face now. His number one priority is his voter suppression bill that Republicans have signed on to for obvious reasons that have to do with winning elections, particularly the midterm elections that are coming up, by suppressing the vote. And he wants this done before the midterm elections, even though they're approaching rapidly, and passing any kind of voter suppression bill now, which he calls the Save America Act. It's actually the Save Republicans from Losing Elections Act. Is his number one priority, even though that would cause a tremendous amount of chaos if done just prior to the midterm elections. That number one priority of Trump and the other Republicans is not about the issues that matter to most families, and that is an obvious point. That it really is not subject to any rational debate. but is a personal priority of Trump, who is pulling out all the stops to avoid Democrats gaining control over the House in 2027. And as he knows, what will follow are multiple investigations of his conduct in a second term and the financial windfalls that have enriched him and his family so far during his second term. And he's willing to do just about anything to avoid that result. And that is his number one priority.